Howdy, my name is Joe Perez, and I've been designated to be the presenter for this project. Our topic is going to be the Federal Reserve: how, when, and why rates change, and is it sustainable? This presentation is for Dr. Miller's class and Professor X's class. Both teach different subjects, but both are professors in the College of Business at Lone Star College. Moving on to the first subject. So, first we're going to define what the Fed is. The Federal Reserve System is the central banking system of the United States. Now, it works through different avenues. The central banking system regulates the supply of money and interest rates and is responsible for the nation's monetary policy. The U.S. government agency also has 7 members, nominated by the President and confirmed by the Senate. They are combined central national authority responsible for overseeing the Federal Reserve System. You can see here, it's the Board of Governors. And the Federal Open Market Committee is going to bring together the expertise of the first two in setting the nation's monetary policy. So, why do the rates change? The Federal Reserve cuts interest rates when the economy slows down in order to reinvigorate economic growth. Rates go up when the economy is doing well. Interest rates and inflation have a direct relationship also. The overall goal of changing the rates is to reduce the cost of borrowing so that people and companies are more willing to invest and spend. This can make waves throughout the economy as a whole and can have effect that's felt by millions of Americans, if not by all Americans. And it in fact does have the potential to impact all Americans. Moving on. Now moving on, we are going to see how the Federal Reserve changes its rates. The Federal Open Market Committee oversees these tools to maintain monetary policy: open market operations, discount rate, and reserve requirements. The Federal Reserve alters these rates to maintain price stability and maximize employment so that the economy is not extremely volatile and so that more people stay employed and the unemployment rate doesn't get too high. Going further on this point, we're going to see when rates change. So the Federal Reserve's interest rate is set 8 times per year by the Federal Open Market Committee. The Federal Reserve rates can change for a multitude of reasons, but the main 2 reasons for this can be due to recessions. An example of this would be COVID-19 in the United States and really the entire world, which is all still pretty fresh in our memories, and inflation. Example being the United States during World War I and also during the Great Depression. The effects of both of these events don't really need to be explained, as they've both been largely impactful on our society, on millions of Americans, on our country, and because of this, they've also been impactful throughout the world. And the effect has been heavily apparent, which just goes back to speak to the significance of the changing rates that the Fed sets. Again, going back to the history of rate changes. So, historic effects of rate changes. From the 1980s to the present year, 2024, we've witnessed the variations of interest rates. In the housing market, inflation hit a high peak of 18.63% in the early 1980s, causing a dramatic decline in the home purchase market. Currently, the rates are anywhere between the high 5 and 7%. The real estate market is greatly affected when rates are raised. The demand for mortgages goes down. If the interest rates come down, the demand for homes goes up as well as the sales price. These are basic economic principles and just go to show that history can repeat itself. And despite the best efforts of those in power, it is probable that something like this can happen again. And it is good to prepare for it and try to avoid it at all costs, as the Fed does. The rate changes going into the future. The current federal interest rate, as of today, is between 5.25 and 5.5%. The expectancy of our federal funds rate is expected to decrease to a 4.6 by the end of 2024. The reasoning behind this prediction is the federal interest rates have been raised 11 times between March 2022 and July of 2023 and have not been adjusted since. And it's very difficult to predict exactly what's going to happen in the future. But like we've mentioned before, history can repeat itself, and it is good to attempt to avoid large inflation rates and things that are going to negatively impact a lot of Americans. It is not very clear what the rate changes going into the future is going to be like, but hopefully we can rest assured that the best decisions are going to be made with the best information available at the time. Going into the next slide, it's going to be the slide I made personally. The broader effects of rate changes. So the effects of rate changes made by the Federal Reserve can be found in many instances. The initial effect on certain things can also facilitate broader effects that have other impacts, like the ones listed to the side. The first example being stocks and bonds. When rates rise, borrowing money becomes more expensive, affecting stock performance. Bonds themselves are inversely affected by rate changes, affecting companies and multiple levels of government, as multiple levels of government use bonds as a form of debt. A second effect would be 401ks. When rates affect stock prices, they can affect the value of 401ks for people all over the country. The effect here can be felt by many Americans, impacting quality of life for the elderly and potentially destroying retirement plans for those that have been saving up for years. The third and most significant example, in my opinion, is going to be auto loans. Car loans are relevant as most finance their vehicles, subjecting consumers to current rates on a mass market scale. The broader effect is either positive or negative for one's quality of life, as it's a large benchmark to consider. The potential risks of this would be companies and maybe just everyday Americans losing many of their possessions. It could be their auto loans, their retirement plans, causing them to make difficult financial decisions that they wouldn't otherwise make. The broader effect of these rate changes is really not measurable, but it is heavily implied because it can affect us in ways that people don't even see sometimes. Because of this, the broader effect is really difficult to plan for a lot of companies. But something that companies can do to combat this is expect these rate changes, or maybe try to get insider info in a ethical way. Maybe just rub elbows with the correct people and get in the way you need to get in to get the information that you need. And the broader effect can also be aided by the government partially, because the Federal Reserve is a part of government. You can vote and vote with your heart. You vote with your heart, the person that you vote for is going to reach your policy that you would like to have enacted into a law. The voice of the people will eventually be heard, and if everybody is able to vote and use their voice, the voice of the people shouldn't be stifled. The resources that people and governments will need to enact this amount of change are already in place. The resources are all there. We have systems set in place to help everyday people register to vote and to help them vote, especially with elderly programs that will shuttle them back and forth from voting centers. So the advice I would give would be to go out and be politically active so that your beliefs may be better represented in the government that represents you. And that is how the government can assist us in solving these problems that currently a lot of Americans have issues with. Moving on from this, I'm going to pass the mic to Felipe so that he can read the conclusion that we all deliberated towards and came to. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Felipe Aguirre. I'm doing the conclusion slide for our international exchange project. My slide was for the conclusion of the overall Federal Reserve exchange rates topic that me and my group did. Just to revise what I wrote down. In summary, the Federal Reserve actively manages exchange rates through a combination of tools, aiming to achieve economic stability and meet its objectives. The decision made during FOMC meetings have far-reaching effects on the US dollar and the global financial markets. The Federal Reserve's exchange rate policies are essential for economic stability while sustainable, and they require vigilance and adaptability to changing circumstances. What this basically says, it just shows you how diverse the Federal Reserve is in managing exchange rates. Pretty much what the previous slide showed, just wrapping up everything we did. So yeah, pretty much just showing how the Federal Reserve meets its requirements, how they meet their requirements, how they come through and talk with the FOMC meetings, balancing financial markets, and of course, managing exchange rates. Thank you.